Welcome back to the Algebra 2 series. Today we're looking at two examples of the ellipse. The first one is fairly standard. It's in a nice form that we can recognize with the center and the a and b values fairly well shown. I'm going to make a list of those items and then we'll graph this. So in the last video I set up the two different forms, and in this case we do notice that the 5 is greater than 4, so this will be representing a squared in our calculations, and the 4 will be representing b squared, or the distance from the center out to the endpoint of the minor axis. In this case, since we're talking about x minus 2, our center or our hk values will end up being 2 comma 0. And of course, that's because the y squared is by itself. There's no term with it. So our center is going to be 2, 0. Our a value is going to be the square root of 5. And our b value is going to be 2. So that's going to give us some lead in to graphing this ellipse. Let's start with that part. So here's our grid, a little bit of a grid here, and let's put in our center first. That's 2, 0. And next we're going to move, in this case, the a is up and down, so we're going to go up and down radical 5. So radical 5 is somewhere between 2 and 3. Put that in there. Maybe 2 plus a little bit. 2 plus a little bit. These will be our vertices. Left and right, we're going to go exactly 2 units, and those will be the endpoints of the minor axis. So I'm going to write EMA in there. Keep in mind that in this class, we tend to notate our points rather than with numbers. We just do it with the letters. It's supposed to be taller than it is wide. Mine looks a little bit wide on that right side, but that's okay. The last thing I'm going to do is write out my Pythagorean identity a squared equals b squared plus c squared, and that's going to identify what our c squared value is. In this case, that's going to be a 5 is equal to 4 plus c squared. So c squared is 1, and that gives a c value of plus or minus 1. In this case, I'm going up or down 1 unit. So that'll put that here. That's going to be my focus there, and my second focus there, center in the middle. So we've successfully graphed this one. Now all we need to do is make our label box. So I like to put it over here as just a box. We'll start with the center, then we'll do the vertices, then we'll do the foci, and finally the endpoints of the minor axis. So I'd like to see 4 things in our box. First of all, the center was at 2, 0. The vertices are up and down from the center, so that's 2 comma plus or minus, in this case, radical 5, and that comes from our a value. Foci are 2 comma plus or minus 1, and the EMA are 2, and I'm going to go left and right 2 units, comma 0. So that's the way that we handle the graphing of a simple ellipse, and that's one that has a center pretty much given in the form that's given here. Let's go on to one that takes a little bit more work to get it set up and graphed, and that is, let's see if my computer will do this for me. There we go. So we're going to graph this second example. Now, obviously, we're not in the correct form, so we're going to have to complete the square. This is going to be a bit nasty. As you can see, we've got a 34 and a 9. Looking at this problem, I don't even want to start it, but I'm going to start it anyway. And here we go. I'm going to try to complete the square for x, complete the square for y, and hopefully get it into the proper form. So in the first case, factoring a 9 out of the x squared, I get x squared minus 2/3 x. That's going to be a little tricky for some folks to do. The second one, not so bad, 34. And this is going to be y squared plus 2y. And that equals 271 with a couple blanks. And I see I'm already going into my graph here. So let's take care of business on this. Excuse the intrusion. Let me move this off to the side here. All right. So let's keep working the algebra now. Next step, of course, is to actually complete the square. This will be x minus 1/3 squared. 1/3 squared is 1/9. And now I see why this turns out so sweetly. That's going to be plus 1 on the right side. Plus 34 here. And this is going to be a y plus 1 quantity squared. This is plus 1, and that makes plus 34. When I add these things together here, it looks like it comes out to be 306. And I'm willing to bet that 34 times 9 is 306. And if that's the case, we'll get this. Dividing by 306 on both sides of the equation gives us our final value of 34 underneath this one and 9 underneath this one. So what I have done in very shorthand is I have divided everything by 306, and that kind of swaps out where the 34 and the 9 end up. So notice that the 34 is larger than the 9, so this 34 will now be our a squared, and this 9 will be the b squared. Since the 34 is underneath the x, that tells me that this is going to be a horizontal ellipse. The only tricky part to this one now is the fact that the center is at 1/3, comma, -1. And that is absolutely nasty in graphing. But we can handle that. So let's go to 1/3, -1, and see if we can graph that out. Here's this 1/3, -1. It's about here. That's my center. And of course, from there, I have to do all these things. I'm going to have to go a squared is 34, and that tells me then that a is the square root of 34. B squared is 9. That tells me that b is 3. I'll start with the easy one. I'm going to go up and down 3 units. That puts my EMA here, and another one down here at the bottom, right about there, maybe a little bit closer to the y-axis there, EMA. Going left and right, I have to go a little bit less than 6 units. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's about a little bit less than 6 units, about here maybe. Same thing to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a little less than 6. About there. These are my vertices. And of course my graph should come up and over, and this should be the picture that we end up with for our ellipse. The only thing that's left is to calculate where our foci are. That's going to be 34 is equal to 9 plus c squared, or in this case 25 equals c squared. C is a nice plus or minus 5, and that's always easier to deal with. That's going to be way out here. That's going to be our focus, and our other focus will be about here. We'll just call that focus there. All right, so we've managed to graph it, and of course the last thing is to make a little box with the information in it about this ellipse. And of course the four items: center, next is vertices, then the foci, and then the EMAs. This is a little bit tricky because of these unusual numbers here. So let's start with this one: 1/3, -1. The vertices are going left and right, so that's going to be 1/3 plus or minus radical 34, -1. So again, I'm moving left and right, radical 34. The foci are 1/3 plus or minus 5, -1. Actually, a little easier than the vertices. And the EMA are going up and down from the center, so that's 1/3, comma, -1 plus or minus, and in this case, it just comes out to be 3. So please feel free to use the plus or minus notation and just put the letters. As you can see, I'm not putting numbers, I'm just putting letters in as my labels on the graph itself. All the information comes in our little box right here. So I hope that helps with those two, one easy, one difficult graph for the ellipse. I'll continue with some other examples in the third video.